Okay, you know those moments in your life where you can remember exactly where you were sitting and exactly what you were wearing, and you even remember what the room smelled like? It was one of those moments that officially began my Mary Kay journey. At Seminar 2006, everything changed, so let me describe the moment. I was a new consultant, and it was my very first seminar. I remember where I was sitting, I remember what I was wearing, and I remember how I felt. The night before that day was awards night, and I saw a director in her 20s sitting on the throne as the queen of the seminar. That next day she was giving her speech, and for the first time I saw young women making lots of money, staying home with their kids, traveling the world, having flexibility, and being recognized. I had never seen anything like it in my life. And I don't remember what she said in her speech, but I remember how I felt. And it was in that moment that I realized that Mary Kay was the only opportunity that I knew of that could be an avenue to everything I ever wanted. And it was in that moment that I first felt the nudge and call from God to be all in with this Mary Kay thing. In that moment, I made a decision. I thought of the following lyrics from a song that I knew. If you only had one shot, one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted in one moment, would you capture it or would you let it slip? Sitting in that arena, I knew that was my moment to seize everything I ever wanted. I crossed the line from curious about Mary Kay to serious about Mary Kay, and I knew there was no turning back. And that's where my vision was born of becoming a national sales director. I hope you all have that moment this weekend. When I look back on my life, there were a lot of events that prepared me to be an entrepreneur in Mary Kay. When I was a little girl, my sisters and I ran a lemonade stand during the summer break. Every morning we would get out our stand and make our lemonade, and we would work that stand for most of the afternoon. We eventually decided to add homemade cookies to our list of products, and I remember asking my dad to sit down with me and make a list of all the ingredients that we needed. Then he took us to the store to help us purchase the supplies, and he always made us use our profit to cover our business expenses. I still remember the thrill I would get when we would sell a 5-cent cup of lemonade. That was my first sales and entrepreneurial experience. I grew up in a large family. I have 3 sisters and 1 brother, and my mom stayed home with us while my dad worked a 9-to-5 job. He had to support a family of 7 on a very average income. I remember my dad would always do extra work and do side jobs on the weekend to help pay the bills. I learned my work ethic from my dad. Money was usually a stress for my parents, and I wasn't able to do a lot of the things that my friends could do because my parents didn't have the money. But God bless my mother. She did a really, really good job of teaching my sisters and I that true wealth is not about money or possessions, but instead about family and love and living a godly life of integrity. That was the message I heard while growing up, an incredibly valuable lesson I learned from my mom. So I grew up believing that my identity and worth was not in money, but I also grew up understanding that with money comes choices. It's undeniable. I didn't have a lot of those choices growing up, and so my logical solution to that problem was to get a job as soon as I could. When I was 12 years old, I would walk about 3 miles to babysit 2 little boys, and I did this all through junior high, working about 15 hours a week as a babysitter. I made $3 an hour, and I loved the extra spending money I had so I could go to the movies with my friends and buy new clothes. In 5th grade, I wanted to play the cello, but my parents couldn't afford the extra cost of renting the instrument, and so I cleaned a lady's house once a week. Every Thursday I would go over and clean her entire very big, beautiful home, and she would pay me $5 every time I cleaned her house so that I could pay for my cello rental. My musical career did not advance past 5th grade, but it was exciting to play the cello that year. When I was 15, I landed my first real job at Dairy Queen, and when it closed for the winter, I went to work at a grocery store where I cleaned toilets and I collected carts in the parking lot. I will forever return a grocery cart to every store because I chased around carts all year long in that parking lot. At 16, I got promoted to a cashier, and I worked part-time at that grocery store all through high school and college. I always had 2 to 3 jobs, and I was a varsity athlete in high school and college, so I was always playing sports on top of working. Now, my friends' parents wouldn't let them get jobs because they told them that being a student and being an athlete was their job. But I didn't have that luxury, so I just decided to do it all well. I was a straight-A student, a varsity athlete, and I worked all through high school and college. I wanted the same choices my friends had, and I was willing to work for it. When I started Mary Kay, I was by no means equipped with any skills of booking, coaching, selling, or recruiting. In fact, I thought no one liked salespeople, and I was slightly embarrassed to tell my friends that I was a beauty consultant. The only sales experience I had was the lemonade stand. but I had an entrepreneurial spirit and a strong work ethic, and I liked choices. When introduced to the Mary Kay opportunity, I could see that it was obvious you could make money, and money to me equaled choices. My recruiter was a friend of mine from church who is now Cadillac Executive Senior Sales Director Tina France. She recruited me shortly after I graduated college. I was also newly married and in my first year of teaching third grade. I was very unhappy with my teaching career, but I kept it a secret and didn't tell anyone. I told everyone that I loved it and that I was making a difference. Tina did a great job of layering me with the Mary Kay opportunity. When I finally decided to start, I told everyone I was doing Mary Kay for the extra money, but the real reason is that I just wanted to prove that it didn't work, and I wanted Tina to stop trying to recruit me. I knew I would give it my all, and I figured it probably wouldn't work out, but I was curious enough to try. Little did I know at the time that I would fall in love with the Mary Kay business and debut as a national sales director 6 years later. Little did I know what God had in store. I was so ill-equipped to be a success in Mary Kay at that time, but what God calls you to, He will equip you for. It's in our weaknesses that He is strong. It's in our inadequacies that He is glorified. And so I want to tell you tonight about my most significant memories in Mary Kay. And I want to do this because I want you to start visualizing the significant memories you're going to create on your own journey. I'll start with the first one. It was my first day after resigning from teaching so that I could do Mary Kay full time. I finally had freedom. For a year and a half, I had worked 50 to 60 hours a week as a teacher and anywhere from 10 to 20 hours a week as a consultant and new director. We earned our Cadillac while I was teaching full time. And so that first day, after my last day of teaching, was absolutely glorious. I remember it like it was yesterday. I slept in, and then I went to our apartment complex pool. No one else was there because those poor souls were at work. I spent the afternoon basking in the sun in my bikini while making booking calls and doing career surveys on the phone. I thought I had died and gone to heaven. I finally had the freedom and flexibility to plan my day and design my life how I wanted. I knew that day that I was officially unemployable. I would never work for someone else ever again. Another significant moment is when we earned our first pink Cadillac. It was that same June that I resigned from teaching, a year and a half into my Mary Kay business. I didn't know at that time that you don't book vacations in June when you're in Mary Kay. And so my husband and I flew off to London, England on June 27th for a 2-week vacation. That was in 2007, and I didn't have a smartphone. I had like one of those dumb phones. I don't even know if they make those anymore. And so when I boarded that plane, it was 3 days before the end of the month, 3 days before the end of our seminar year, and 3 days before I would wrap up the biggest goal I'd ever worked on. I would not turn my phone on for 2 more weeks. All I could do was land in London, England, look at InTouch, and hope and watch that orders would go in to finish our Cadillac. I remember on June 30th, anxiously logging into InTouch, and I looked at the screen, and I looked at our production, and I couldn't believe my eyes. Our production had crossed what we needed to earn our first pink Cadillac. I saw 34,000 in wholesale production on my InTouch screen, which was more than double the highest production we had done so far. I looked at my husband, Cliff, who was sitting on the couch in a small flat in the suburb of London, and I told him we earned our pink Cadillac. In that moment, after doing 34,000 wholesale, my mind was expanded, and it would never go back, and I knew we were on to bigger and better things. My next most significant moment is when we earned our first top director trip. My now senior national sales director, Pam Shaw, had always talked about the trips she had been on, and I also had the company DVD of the trip from the past year. And so I would replay the stories I heard from Pam, and I would replay the images I saw on that DVD all year long. You have to think about a goal 1,000 times before it comes to fruition. Anything big you accomplish always starts in your mind first. And the thought of taking Cliff on an all-expenses-paid trip to Germany that I had earned, it made me so excited I could hardly stand it. So all year long, I would replay one main thought. I would picture walking down the hall of the hotel in Germany. I would picture arriving at our door in our room and opening the door and walking in to a beautiful, luxurious European hotel. I love everything about hotels. I love the smell of the room. I love the tidiness. I love the way they look. And so I would replay that thought over and over and over again. Well, that June, we had to do 56,000 wholesale to finish the trip. The highest we had done so far was 37,000 wholesale. On June 1st, I wrote down 56,000 on my tracking sheet. It was the first time I saw that number on paper in black and white. My first thought was to throw up all over the paper. But I didn't spend a second questioning it, and I just baked like it was no big deal. I put the blinders on, and I got to work, and I prayed like I had never prayed before. On the last day of the month, June 30th of 2008, we had 36,000 wholesale in, 20,000 wholesale to go in one day. I knew where some of it was coming from, but no matter how I crunched the numbers, I couldn't account for the 20,000. I just couldn't find it. That afternoon, I happened to do a career survey on the phone. She happened to sign on the spot. I asked her if we could talk about inventory 2 hours later, and she said yes. On that inventory call, she was interested in inventory, and so I asked her to call the bank to see if she could get approved for a credit card. She said she would. I asked her if she would call me immediately after calling the bank to tell me what they said, and she did. The phone rang, and she got approved, and that evening we put in her star order, which was the last little bit we needed after orders had poured in all evening. Around 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I remember looking at InTouch and seeing 56,000. The feeling was indescribable. That next morning on Pam Shaw's conference call for her area, I got to announce that we had earned the trip and had broken the record in the Shaw area to be the first unit to earn the top director trip in our first full year as a unit. At that point, I had been in the company for 2.5 years, and I had just earned my highest commission check of $18,000. That was exactly 1 year after I resigned from teaching. It would have taken me 35 years as a teacher to make half the income I started making that year at the age of 24. That seminar and that trip to Germany forever changed my life. Another significant moment is when we finished our national area, my mom planned a surprise family dinner out to a restaurant, which is not something my mom would normally do. At that dinner, she gave me a letter. My love language is words of affirmation, but that is not how my mom expresses love. My mom has always held a very high standard for me. Her expectations often seemed hard and unrealistic in the moment, but she taught me to be strong. She's the most amazing mother God could have ever given me, but words of affirmation never flowed freely when I was growing up. At that dinner, my mom handed me a letter that she had typed out on beautiful stationery. And that letter contained more words of affirmation than I have ever received from my mom in one moment. At the top of the letter, she typed a quote that says, "Life is full of challenges. Champions accept them and conquer them. Champions care more than others think is wise. They risk more than others think is safe. They dream more than others think is practical. And they expect more than others think is possible." And to read those words from my mom and to know that she believed that I was a champion was a moment that I will forever cherish. The last significant moment I'll share with you tonight was on August 5th, 2013. That was the day of our official onstage national area debut at Seminar. The morning before our debut, I woke up in the Omni Hotel in Dallas with my son and daughter, Ian, who was 2.5 at the time, and Aria, who was 6 months old. They had no idea what was happening or how significant the week was, but I was so grateful that they would be raised in Mary Kay and that they were there to celebrate our debut. On day one, our area was the first to go on stage. I remember standing in the dark hallway right off the stage where they lined up our area. I was standing in front of the line holding on to Cliff's arm. My sales directors were standing behind us, and I couldn't even look back at their faces because I knew I didn't want to have an ugly cry before I went on stage. Tracy Giese went on stage and started to introduce us, and then I saw my name and pictures flashing on the big screen, and then my name was officially announced. I held tightly onto Cliff's arm and started to walk up the ramp to the stage. I remember taking the first step onto the stage because the lights were so bright. I couldn't believe the moment I dreamed of was really happening. And then I watched the most important people in the world walk out to join me. The curtains opened up, and my mom and my dad and my sisters and Ian and Aria walked out. And I got to watch them walk towards me. And I tried to soak in the significance of the moment. And then Greg Franklin said, "Now it's time to hear a few words from our debuting national." So I handed my flower bouquet to Cliff, and I grabbed the mic. And for 6 minutes, I had a platform to tell our area's story and describe what my journey had meant to me. I got to affirm and thank my parents in front of 10,000 people, a dream come true. I saw the faces of all my sales directors on stage as I spoke. It was a privilege to share the stage with them. We had gone to war together to finish our national area, and I will remember that moment forever. So this weekend, I want you to dream about your most significant moments you're going to create on your Mary Kay journey. I want you to dream about the opportunity you're going to have to tell them on stage someday. Whatever vision God gives you this weekend, go home and have the guts to chase it down. There's a quote that says, "Ships are safe in the harbor," but that's not what ships are made for. You aren't made for the harbor either. Your significant moments are going to be out on the rough sea, way outside your comfort zone. Resistance and adversity will meet you at every turn, and those will be what makes your significant moments even sweeter. Failure and disappointment, yep, they're going to be there too. But decide right now that you are worth it. Decide that your family is worth it, and that your future is worth it, and that living in obedience to the vision God has given you is worth it. Go home and do it anyways. Go home and win. Thank you, and may God bless you.